Every institution that has endured for 1,000 years carries within it two things simultaneously: the rules that are written down and the rules that are simply understood. In the British monarchy, the distance between those two categories has always been where the most consequential decisions are made, not in Parliament, not in proclamations, in conversations, quiet, careful, and rarely reported, between the people who will inherit the future and the people who are deciding what that future looks like. This is the story of one of those conversations. And at its center sits a question that sounds simple, but reaches into the deepest roots of an ancient institution. What, precisely, does the modern monarchy owe its daughters? Born on the 2nd of May, 2015, Princess Charlotte Wales entered the world as something genuinely new inside the British royal family. She was, as royal historians and legal commentators quickly noted, the first female royal in history whose place in the line of succession would not be displaced by the birth of a younger male sibling. That protection came directly from the Succession to the Crown Act 2013, legislation that, when it came into force in March 2015, implemented what had been agreed upon at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Perth, Australia, in October 2011. That gathering, which produced what is now known as the Perth Agreement, saw the leaders of all 16 Commonwealth realms commit to a coordinated reform, eliminating male preference primogeniture, which had governed royal succession for centuries. Under the old rules, a younger son would automatically displace an older daughter in the line of succession, regardless of birth order. Under the new ones, the eldest child inherits. Full stop. As the Succession to Crown Act's own explanatory notes confirmed, the legislation was designed so that gender would have no relevance when determining succession to the throne for anyone born after the Perth Agreement date of October 28, 2011. Charlotte was born in 2015. She is fully protected by that reform. She was not displaced by the birth of her younger brother Prince Louis in April 2018, and she never will be. Currently, Princess Charlotte, at 10 years old, is third in line to the throne, and yet, succession, the legal question of who wears a crown, is only one dimension of what it means to belong to the royal family. The other dimension, the one that the 2013 Act never touched, is considerably harder to legislate. It concerns not the constitutional future, but the institutional one. The question of what a royal life looks like once the next generation reaches adulthood, and how the decisions being made today will shape that life in ways the public cannot yet fully see. It is on that territory, the territory of institutional positioning, long-term planning, and the practical architecture of what it means to be a working royal, that questions have begun to surface about Princess Charlotte's future. And it is on that, since ascending to the throne in September 2022, following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, King Charles III has pursued what has become one of his most publicly acknowledged institutional priorities, a slimmed-down monarchy. The concept is not new. Charles had been discussing it for years as Prince of Wales, but as king, he has been in a position to begin implementing it. In broad terms, the vision involves concentrating the working structure of the monarchy around a smaller, more tightly defined group of senior royals. According to reports in Times, the slimmed-down model would center on a core group of senior royals: King Charles, Camilla, Prince Edward and his wife Sophie. What is not settled in the same way is the question of what happens to Charlotte and to Louis once the slimmed-down institutional model begins taking practical shape around them. George's path as future king is clearly defined. The institution is built around preparing heirs. But the parallel question, what structured, supported, and meaningful role exists within the institution for the heir siblings, has always been answered differently in different eras, and not always well. Royal commentators have increasingly noted the significance of how William and Catherine are preparing all three children, not just George. Royal journalist Phil Dampier has said that the children are getting used to dealing with crowds and speaking to people, and that they appear to have the tools to deal with their future roles. He noted, "The future of the monarchy depends on them. In 10 years' time, they will be the stars." That framing, all three children as stars, all three as meaningful participants in the monarchy's future, appears to reflect something Catherine has quietly been insisting upon in institutional terms, not merely symbolic ones, because the concern, as royal observers have framed it, is not that Charlotte will be excluded from royal life. It is whether the institutional architecture being built around a slimmed-down model will, over time, produce a situation where Charlotte's role is described in modern language but shaped by older assumptions, visible, celebrated, but ultimately defined by what she is not, rather than what she is. History offers little comfort on this question. The trajectory of royal daughters who are not heirs has, across the generations, tended toward one of two outcomes. Either they carve out exceptional and self-defined roles, as Princess Anne did, through relentless work and force of personality, or they found themselves gradually repositioned, over years and decades, further from the institutional center than their public profiles during childhood would have suggested. The risk is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It accumulates, almost invisibly, in a series of decisions that each individually appear reasonable about resource. It is worth noting that the concern here is not financial in the crude sense. Charlotte, as the daughter of the future king and the granddaughter of the current one, is not at risk of material hardship. What is at stake is something more elusive and, in its own way, more important. The nature and definition of her role within an institution that is, right now, actively deciding what roles it wishes to sustain. Reports suggest that when Prince William eventually becomes king, he may take a radical departure from his father's slimmed-down model, reportedly looking to increase the royal roles of extended family members, including cousins like Princess Beatrice, Princess Eugenie, and Zara Tindall when he takes the throne. That signals something significant. William appears to understand that a monarchy with too few visible participants struggles to maintain the human warmth and public engagement that sustains its popularity. Charlotte's active participation in that future model would seem to be something both William and Catherine are determined to protect and predefine before the institutional defaults of the current era make assumptions of their own. Those familiar with how Catherine approaches institutional matters suggest that her engagement with questions about Charlotte's future is consistent with her broader working style. She does not argue from emotion, but from structure. She asks about frameworks. She identifies where assumptions have been allowed to substitute for clarity, and she presses, quietly but persistently, for the assumptions to be replaced with the is actively shaping it. The slimmed-down model is not, in its framing, a contraction of the institution's ambition. It is an attempt to make it more sustainable, more coherent, and less vulnerable to the reputational damage that comes when too large a cast of peripheral royals generates headlines the institution cannot manage. That is a legitimate institutional concern, and Charles has pursued it with clear conviction. But the conversation that Catherine has reportedly been pressing him on touches a nerve that even the most carefully designed institutional models tend to underestimate. What happens to the people inside the structure when the structure prioritizes consolidation? Charles has made his desire for a slimmed-down monarchy known ever since assuming the throne in September 2022. His personal wealth is estimated at $770 million per the 2024 Sunday Times Rich List, and he has been actively reviewing where duchy funds and sovereign grant resources are directed. Those are not abstract decisions. They are decisions with direct consequences for which royal activities receive support, which roles attract institutional investment, and which family members find themselves operating with the full backing of the palace machinery, and which do not. Catherine's intervention, as it has been described, is not a challenge to Charles's authority or to his institutional vision. It is, rather, a request that his vision be explicit about the next generation, all the next generation, before the architecture of the slimmed-down model becomes too settled to easily adapt. The question she is pressing, in the end, is an old one. It predates Charles, predates Elizabeth, predates the entire modern conception of the monarchy as a media-facing institution. It is a question that every family embedded in a system of hereditary hierarchy eventually confronts. How do you build a future that is fair to everyone within it, when the system itself was not designed with fairness as its organizing principle? Final sequence. Footage of Charlotte at recent public appearances